These Sunday night games with the WWE pay-per-views are tough, but when the Eagles are playing, I'll probably have to watch the pay-per-view Monday, push Raw off to Tuesday. So don't ruin anything for me, Casey, when we talk on Monday's show. You hear me, pal?
I'll try and keep everything a secret.
I saw
kayfabe.
I saw Casey tweeting out the WWE on ESPN, their Hell in a Cell predictions and their best matches, but I won't be able to watch Sunday night. I got to watch the Eagles game, so I'll probably watch that. I hope they don't give you another one of those 4 or 5 hour productions like they've been doing. But that being said, we got Eagles and Cowboys on Sunday night. I'm really interested to get your take on this matchup as Casey kind enough to jump into Sal's spot today. And, the big matchup for me is the Cowboy offensive line against the Eagles defensive front. The winner of that battle, do they win the game?
Yeah, pretty much. The Cowboys, if you look at their pass blocking metrics, they're just almost as good as their run blocking metrics. Not quite, but almost as good. And their run blocking metrics are top 5 in the league in my good blocking rate metrics. So, if you can't stop the Cowboys' offensive line, the thing it does is not only, of course, are they going to be able to get their offense going, but it protects their defense. The Cowboys' defensive metrics are actually fairly good. They're top 10 against the run, and they're upper half league against the pass. But that's not as good as their personnel is. So it's kind of where if they can keep the pace of the game going, you can't get against their defense. Just like a couple years ago.
Benny Logan, big loss in this game for Philadelphia. My memory serves that he's had some really good games in this rivalry. I remember him famously kind of coming out and calling the Cowboys offensive line overrated, and he's out for this game. It'll be Bo Allen getting a lot of those snaps there, but you wonder if that's going to be a factor in this game, a guy like Logan being out there, if that could really be a difference-making proposition in this one.
Yeah, the thing is you're only going to beat the Cowboys. Like in the good blocking metric, usually your league average, you're going to get good blocking roughly 40% of the time. The offense would like that number to be 50%. The defense would like that number to be down to 30%. And one of the ways that you can increase that number is if you can win point of attack blocks. Somebody's going to run the point of attack, and the defensive lineman beats the offensive lineman. There you go. And even if you're stepped on a defensive lineman, even if it only takes 1 or 2 plays where you might have won and now you don't win, that's the sort of thing that gets you. It can get a significant percentage in there. It can make a 10, 15, 20-yard difference. And in a game that's this close, you can keep a drive or 2 alive. If you've got bigger runs like that, it can make a big difference.
Casey Joyner is with us. Now, yesterday, Sal Pal told us the one strength of the Eagles, one deficiency of the Cowboys is also a deficiency of the Eagles. See if you concur. They're secondary, but the Eagles don't really have that deep threat. Is that an area where the Cowboys can be had in that secondary? But, we know the Eagles have been having big problems at wide receiver.
Yeah, the thing is that the Cowboys haven't been put in the game situations where they have to, their secondary doesn't sit back and play both the pass and the run, because their secondaries, their personnel-wise, I have, great players according to red, yellow, green basis, green being bad and red being good and yellow being okay. The Cowboys have too many green-rated players in their secondary, and I think, they are only middle of the league in yards per attempt allowed. I think they're 16th in that category, but that's the type of defense that if you can go vertical, you can hit some big plays against them. And that's the thing is the Eagles would love to be able to get vertical early, because if you can get Dallas behind an offense, now you're putting Dak Prescott in a situation where maybe he's got to throw more often and maybe he's playing into a kind of game situation he doesn't like. So I think the early portion of this game is going to really be a deciding factor.
Hey, what makes Prescott so difficult right now to deal with? We know he hasn't really turned. He has the one turnover. Why has he been so successful?
I think he's made one bad decision in my bad decision rate metric all year. He's very good at protecting the football. He'll take his deep shots, but he doesn't take a lot of them. When he does, he's just not going to force passes into coverage. He's bought into the whole idea of Dallas that we win with our offensive line and running game, and if we can hit the big play, that's great. But if it's not there, let's come back and play another day, because our offensive line and running game is so good that they can get us out of a lot of situations. So that's where I think the Eagles. I'm curious to see, can they get the kind of pass rush against him? Because I'd like to see them have him drop back, put him in a situation where he's got to drop back. If you're looking at it from the Eagles' perspective, make him drop back, 35, 40 times in a game. Because if you can do that, and then you can use the kind of pass rush you had last week, you can see if maybe you can start getting some pressure on making him make some bad decisions. Because as good as he is, he's still a rookie, and I still wonder if that bad decision rate is going to hold up if you get pressure on him.
Hey, what Who's more important to Dallas's offense working, Prescott or Elliott?
Oh, Elliott by far. By far, he's one of those backs. The funny thing is, if you look at his good blocking yards per attempt, which is a measure of how good he is when he gets good blocking, he's very good in that category, but he's not elite. But he's one of those backs that's a rarity in that he'll give you the same production on carry number 1 at the beginning of the season as he will at carry number 300. And that carries through a game where he'll be just as productive, if not more productive, later in the game as he will earlier in the game when the defense gets worn down. So as he goes, so goes that offense. Because if he leaves, they still have good running backs, but it's just not the same.
Casey Joyner breaking down the matchups here. Give me a spot you think Philadelphia should go after on either side here when you talk about the run game, the pass game. Is it a better game for Philly to get the run game going, or is this we talked a little bit about that passing attack, but where is the spot that you think Philly should try to target?
Skandrick and Claiborne especially. I would go Matthews and Green Beckham against those guys and try and I'd like to see if they can get, it sounds like a lot of passes, but if you could get 10 to 15 targets to those two players in those matchups there, that would be a really favorable situation. You could hit some big plays. I think those two are not very good in coverage. Skandrick is battling an injury, and if you can get those sorts of matchups, I think you can hit the 5, 6 big plays that you need to get your drives going and start to make that game flow situation go in your direction.
Hey, Sal told us yesterday, and I thought it was interesting. He believes that this is going to be a game in Wentz's hands, that if they're going to win this game, it's going to have to be Wentz that wins the game. I guess that means taking some shots down the field, kind of what you said, Casey. Get that early lead, maybe surprise with a shot over the top, get that lead, and then that puts your defense in a better spot. Is this a game that if the Eagles end up winning, it's because Wentz won the game?
I would say that's the most likely scenario, that Wentz wins the game for him. I'm also curious, though. We've seen the past couple weeks where, Philadelphia, how they play in the run defense. Against Washington, they gave up a lot of big plays, and they didn't have really good safety support against the run. And suddenly these 6 and 7 yard gains were turning into much longer gains. You can have that problem against Dallas. So I would say Wentz is the primary one, but then a secondary one would be, can you get the safeties to come up and run support and hold Dallas to a reasonable number when they get good blocking? Because if he's only getting 6, 7 yards per attempt when he gets good blocking, instead of breaking off some 30 and 40 yard gains and suddenly getting 12 yards per attempt on good blocking, I think it'd be all the difference. Because Dallas is not the kind of offense I think that wants to do 12, 13, 14 play drives, even with the kind of team they have.
Hey, on that note, where you look at Philly with the safeties, with Ron Brooks out, they're talking a lot about the potential of having to use Malcolm Jenkins as that slot. That's not a good matchup with Cole Beasley. We've seen that act before. Is that a spot where Dallas really will go after if they see Jenkins slide into that slot role?
Yeah, the problem with that is then you get to play a lot of you don't want Jenkins being in a trail position. You don't want him trying to chase. That's not going to work. So you've got to play zone coverage and make Beasley go underneath it and then hit him. I mean, that's really the solution to that problem.
Right,
so,
make the tackle.
Yeah, make the tackle and make him punish him and make sure he knows if he's going to the middle. He's going to take a hit every time. Take Bill Belichick style football. It's important to stay away from that matchup. I'm curious though how it'll affect things if he's got to rotate out of his normal position and now he's having to play the slot. Okay, now does that hurt your safety position? Now we're talking about run support and things, and Jenkins has been hit or miss and run support at the safety position. So maybe it's a plus if you get somebody who can be more consistent back there. But it's another issue because if he's playing the slot, if I'm the Cowboys, I might be thinking, well, fine, maybe I can go Dez Bryant deep because now I'm playing against the backup safety.
Yeah, and one thing's for certain here, Jenkins, he has been pretty solid. But if you move him to that slot role, we saw last year that game that the Cowboys beat the Eagles in Philly. They went after him a lot. So Mills and Watkins, the two reserves there, and we'll see if the Eagles end up going with C.J. Smith and activate him this week as an extra guy in that secondary. We're talking with Casey Joyner. All right, if you're Dallas, where are you licking your chops when you look at Philly?
I'm definitely. The thing is that I do want, if I'm Dallas, to go a little more pass heavy than I usually would because the Eagles have played really good run defense, and if I'm Dallas, I don't want to necessarily test that, because if the good Eagles show up, then the good Eagles run defense shows up, then I might be limiting my game plan. I want to go after those secondary situations. I want to say, hey, great, you guys are having to play a backup a nickel corner, and you guys are going to be weak in the secondary. I want to say, yeah, I want to go more vertical. Having said that, you're still going to go first and foremost and see if the Eagles' rush defense is going to be. If the Eagles' rush defense is like it was a couple of weeks ago against Washington, if I'm Dallas, I run the ball 40 times. So I'm going to test that early, but then be ready to go to the passing game, fill it up as run defense shows up.
Well, Schwartz said last week, if I'm watching my team, I'm running 65 times against us, and they fixed it last week. What did they do? I mean, I don't know that you could say the Vikings are some vaunted rushing attack. That's the problem. So if you say, well, the Eagles fixed some things, how much did the Vikings' inept offensive line play into it?
That's part of it. The Vikings had come off of their best run blocking game of the season the week before, so they weren't quite as bad as they probably looked. They played worse early in the season, believe it or not. But that's a big part of it, is having a better matchup. And part of it is, though, is that you have better run safety support. I mean, when the safeties and the linebackers are coming up, the thing is when you're stopping the running game, you want to win the point of attack box. If you don't win the point of attack box, you've got to defeat your block, go downfield, make the tackle. You've got to have your safeties come up and make tackles, and they can't even just you don't want to miss one tackle. You miss one tackle, it's a 60-yard gain. So you got to be very consistent in those situations. And the Eagles were just a lot more consistent against Minnesota. But like you said, it's the Minnesota offensive line that's not nearly as good, and I don't think you're going to have that sort of game against Dallas. So again, I think that the front seven is going to get blocked, and it's going to have to be, can the safeties come up and make the play? Because if they can't, Elliott will have a couple of big runs.
All right, this is interesting because Schwartz doesn't like the blitz. He did blitz last week, and it worked, but these are different quarterbacks and different offensive lines. So if you're Jim Schwartz, do you blitz this week?
I might run blitz if my run game's not working, and make them pass and things. But when you blitz, you're leaving your secondary into more predictable situations, and if you're blitzing and you're not getting there, you're putting yourself in a bad situation too. And Dallas has people who can go vertical, so I'm blitzing as a change of pace. I'm blitzing again, maybe to stop the run, blitzing maybe to try to confuse Prescott once or twice to give him a look that he hasn't seen yet. But I'm not going to do it as a regular occurrence now.
All right, Casey Joyner's with us here, looking at the matchups to watch in the Eagles-Cowboys game. And Jordan Hicks last week at 11 tackles, the middle linebacker there. Sure, he's going to be busy this week. And Ezekiel Elliott, a big, a guy who's kind of a one-cut guy. Even though they have a good line and they run the ball very well, is this a game where a guy like Jordan Hicks could be, highlighted a lot? He had 11 tackles last week. Are you going to hear a guy like his name called a lot this week? Is that the key, the middle linebacker cleaning things up?
That's very much a key in keeping him clean, too. The Cowboys, he's got to be able to beat, if they're going to grow directly on the second-level block, maybe have the center go over the second level, he's got to beat that block. And the Cowboys, I like their center, but I think that Hicks can win that battle. But also, it's a matter of maybe it's having the lineman up front just occupy the blockers and say, hey, we're not going to let you. You want to make a combination block. You want to have both the linemen block and then sneak down and block the linebacker. We're just not going to let you do that. If I'm the Eagles, I might actually try and see how many defensive holding penalties the referees will call, because if they're not going to call them, I'm holding the lineman all day and trying to keep Hicks free.
Carson Wentz this week, what's he up against? What's the prognostication if you are looking at Carson Wentz, who we talked about earlier? He's hitting that little rookie struggle. I mean, as the struggles, because, there's been a lot of talk about his mechanics. He doesn't have great weapons. Is this a game where you think Carson Wentz, this Dallas defense is the kind of defense that he can excel against? I
definitely want to sell him on the idea that he doesn't have to win the game, because he's been, it's funny, defenses haven't rattled him. It looks like after a few weeks of the season, he started to get a little, from a scouting tape, from just what I see on tape from a scouting perspective, he just seems to be shaky. Like he's getting nervous a little more than he used to. Because the first few weeks of the season, he just looked cold, his ice in his veins. He just did not look like anything would rattle him. And now it's looking like he's getting a little bit there. And when you've got this sort of matchup, and now this is the game of the week, biggest game of the week, it's your division rival, and you're at Dallas, and all those things that go with it. I want him to calm down, but I might put a situation in there if I'm the Eagles where I'm having him throw, as we talked earlier this week, have him throw more screen passes like he was earlier in the season, so you can calm him down, so you can get away from that early game Brett Favre moment and get back to being relaxed. Because if you can get him to be relaxed, I think he'll do very well against this matchup.
Hey, you're a numbers guy. Here's an interesting number from ESPN Stats and Info. The Eagles blitz just 16.4% percent of dropbacks. It's the fourth fewest in the NFL. When they do blitz, opponents have been sacked 13.5% of the time, which is the most in the NFL, which kind of means Jim Schwartz is kind of picking and choosing. And I thought the blitz he sent against the Bears on that Sunday night game, second play of the game, Jenkins on the corner, really set the tone for that game. Is this the kind of blitzing that he needs to do, kind of picking and choosing against Dak Prescott?
Yeah, just like we were talking a couple minutes ago, that he doesn't need to use it as a full-time thing, as a good change of pace, and make Prescott wonder if the blitz is coming. Because if you can make Prescott, like you mentioned there, you get an early game sack, you get an early game, even a hit on the guy, and make him think, hey, maybe they're going to be blitzing, maybe they're coming, maybe somebody's going to be coming after me, maybe I've got to look for things that I don't normally think I have to look for. If you can do that, and you can blitz effectively, so that if he thinks, maybe blitz isn't coming, but on 1 out of 6 plays it is, and man, when they do, they're really good at that. If you can get into his head about that would be a very positive situation. Because again, I think Prescott, he's handled things very well this year. I don't think he's been in a lot of game situations where a team has rattled him like that. So if I'm the Eagles, I want to get a couple of hits on him and say, hey, you're going to be hit today, and see if you can stand up to it.
Des Bryant's back. What's it do for Dallas?
If they can get him to where he was last year and such, if he can get back to that level, it's a huge plus for them. But he had only had a few stretch vertical passes thrown his way before he got hurt. I believe it was 5 stretch vertical passes before he got injured, and that's a low number for as many games as they played. Stretch vertical is 21 or more yards downfield. So if he's not being utilized in that sense, if you're using him as more of a dink and dunk guy or maybe just a medium passes, you're not getting as much as you can out of him. So I'd be curious to see if Dallas, in his first game back, will say, hey, we're going to go vertical with him, because if they can go vertical with him, it changes the dynamic of the game.
Casey Joyner is with us. Eagles and the Cowboys will get his pick on the game coming up in just a few, but I want to take a look at some of the other key matchups this week, including the one across the pond when we see Washington take on the Bengals. And Casey, Washington's going to be without Matt Jones this week. We don't know what kind of Deshaun Jackson we're going to get. Jordan Reed could be back in that game, but tough spot for Washington. I think the Bengals are a team that people are kind of forgetting about, maybe sweeping them under the rug a little bit. It is a tough spot for Washington, I think.
Yeah, it is. Washington's run defense has been terrible this year, and Cincinnati's done a very good job in good blocking and a good blocking rate metric. Also, Josh Norman that adds another element to the injury issues for Washington. Yeah, I think it's going to be I would be surprised if Cincinnati doesn't win that game, just because I think Washington's been getting by. They're playing worse than what their record shows, and I think it's going to catch up to them eventually.
Yeah, one thing with Washington there, you got Kirk Cousins. What do you think of him? Is he vying for this contract 8 games through? Has he swayed opinions at all?
If they keep winning, there's going to be an idea that, he's a winner and that sort of thing. But if you're looking at him on tape and you're looking at his metrics, he's still the same guy. He's still not a great vertical passer. And if you can't be you don't pay a quarterback big money for being a good dink and dunk passer,
no.
Generally speaking. You pay him for verticals, and he's still not a great vertical passer. And he's got weapons, too. So if he doesn't do that, and he's not going to do it against Cincinnati, more than likely he did, because they've got a good secondary.
All right, a couple other games of note this week that I got my eye on, get your opinion on. How about this one, New England at Buffalo? Buffalo beat them last time. No McCoy. Goodwin's out. They already don't have Watkins, but it is in Buffalo. Can the Bills sweep the Pats, starting with Sunday's game here at New Era Field?
The Tom Brady revenge tour will continue in this game. He is going to be look, Buffalo's got some good players on their defense. Roby Coleman's been very good at, and their nickel spot, Corey Graham's a good safety. They've got some good players, but their offense is now completely one-dimensional. I mean, if McCoy was in there, I might be a little more swayed. Gillislee's been good, but if you're Bill Belichick, okay, I got to stop Gillislee in the run defense, because they don't have anything in their passing game. So I don't think Buffalo's got enough offense to hold up in this game.
Here's another one for Casey Joyner here at Green Bay. A lot of questions about what's been going on with them. Atlanta, we talk about them always in shootouts. What are you seeing in that game?
I think this could be another shootout. I just did an article for ESPN's Insider Section. It's going to be posted, I believe, tomorrow, and it reviews the Green Bay offense and whether or not they can keep that dink and dunk stuff they did against Chicago last week, whether or not that can be a recipe for success. Turns out it can be. And Green Bay has got a lot of teams on their schedule that are very bad against short passes. Atlanta is one of them. So Green Bay is going to be able to dink and dunk, and they're going to use Ty Montgomery and a lot of those receivers in a lot of ways. I have a feeling it'll be a shootout game. It's 50-50. Probably Green Bay wins, but it's going to be close.
All right, there's some of the bigger matchups this week. You also have some interesting ones. Detroit's at Houston. Both those teams kind of in the middle. Detroit's won 4 in a row. Houston now has to battle Tennessee, it looks like, after Tennessee. They really dominated Jacksonville last night. Bortles, the new co-host of Garbage Time with Katie Nolan. I mean, he's absolutely just coming in late, chucking the ball around when they're down 33. Terrible. But give me your take on probably the matchup, maybe the marquee matchup of the NFL season so far with the ratings. This one should be a ratings winner, Philadelphia, Dallas. How do you see this one going down?
Oh, by the way, fantasy owners love Bortles last night, too, the few who played him. So Philadelphia and Dallas, I actually see Dallas, it's because it's on the road, because of the way Wentz has played, because of the way Dallas's offensive line has played. They've got Bryant back. There's just too many check marks in Dallas's direction. I don't think it's a slam dunk that Dallas wins this game, but I think it's 60-40 that they do, so I'm picking Dallas.
All right, Dallas it is for Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. And that game, of course, right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll recap it on Monday, see what we got right, see what we got wrong. Casey Joyner's back on Monday at 5:05. Enjoy. What are you watching Sunday night? What's your viewing pleasure Sunday night?
Gonna have to football's the primary. Gonna have to put the WB on the back burner on that one. I do have, by the way, though, a WB article I did for the Getting Over series. Talks about how wrestlers what they do to get over, and this week's one covers exaggerate even when the truth is impressive. Talks a lot about Andre the Giant.
Nice. I will send you I'll send you a DM of my Halloween costume. All right. There's just a little tease for you. Okay.
Okay.
All right, pal.
Good.
Take care.